Hi everyone, Stepan here with another training game. I'll go d4. It takes a while to get paired, sometimes. Okay, d4, c4. Let's see what he goes for. Last game I got destroyed. I had the black pieces in the g3 semi-slav, and I've worked on that opening a lot since. So I usually have a rule that if I mess up a game and it's not because of tactics or something that cannot be fixed quickly, if it's something that I can fix quickly, then I try to fix it before playing the next game. Okay, e6. I will allow the Nimzo-Indian. Let's see what he does. Okay, queen c2. Now castles, d5 or c5 are the most common moves. He could go d6. He could go b6. Those are the moves. Okay, takes. And I'm gonna go bishop g5 unless he plays queen takes. And if he plays queen takes, I'm going bishop d2. If he plays knight takes, I'm going e4. Queen takes is the move here, the most common move. Previously I didn't take on d5. I used to play bishop g5, which is unsound and kind of aggressive. The engine says black is slightly better after bishop g5 on d5, but I like the setups. But I've decided to try and play the main lines. Pawn takes, that's a mistake. Pawn takes is a mistake because of bishop g5. He needed to take with the queen. The idea is queen d5 and queen f5, trading queens. Or, I mean, I could be mistaken, but I don't think I am. We will have a look at it after the game. Now we've transposed to a sort of exchange Slav. I want to say, without him having a pawn on c6. It's a symmetrical pawn structure. Wow, that's a strange move. What? Bishop e6 is a strange move. Okay, I'm just gonna go e3. I mean, I understand it's tough to play bishop f5, but still, he should have castled and then gone knight bd7 and played a regular queen's gambit exchange variation. Queen's gambit declined exchange variation. This is the Carlsbad pawn structure. Sorry, it's not symmetrical, it's a Carlsbad pawn structure. So the usual plans apply. Now with the bishop on e6, in the exchange QGD, I like playing bishop d3 followed by knight e2, knight f4, trying to punish that bishop for being on e6. I didn't have queen a4 there because of knight c6. I could have done that had he played. Okay, now no reason to discuss that any further. Bishop d3, threatening bishop takes h7. If h6, I don't think I'm gonna go h4. I'm not in the mood for crazy stuff like that. Also, he has knight e4 because he has a pawn on d5. So h6, bishop h4 seems reasonable, although h6 is always a slight inaccuracy because he doesn't have enough control over the g6 square. I keep repeating that, and I really believe that to be true. Okay. Now if I put a knight on e5, it's not easy for him to play knight g6, evicting my knight. Yeah, the bishop on e6 isn't a well-placed piece. And the bishop on b4 will serve as a tempo gain for the beginning of my minority attack, if he ever plays c6. If he plays c5, then I believe I will go a3. I think so. So c5, a3, bishop c3, bc3. And then if he plays, okay, he didn't play c5. I could consider a3 now, or I could consider knight e2 or knight f3. As I said, I like knight e2 when the bishop is on e6, but knight f3 is also tempting. I think because of c5, I'm going to play knight f3, so that c5, c4 doesn't force me to play bishop f5. Although I could consider knight e2. Knight e2, c5, a3, bishop c3, bc3, c4, bishop f5, queen f5. I shouldn't be spending too much time on this decision, but okay, I'm going knight f3. I'm afraid of c5 because he didn't play c6. So c5 comes in one move, and c4 is awkward. I don't want to have to deal with that. Maybe I don't want to play bishop f5. Still, c5 seems to be the correct move now. If I take it, knight takes, castles, knight d3, queen d3, bishop pair for an IQP, that's not enough. So c5 takes, knight takes, bishop f5, takes, queen takes. I'm not sure if I want to take on c5 or not. I mean, maybe he doesn't play c5. I'm just trying to think what to do if he does. So c5. If I don't take, he could go c4. Okay, c6. That's great. Now I'm happy. Now I'm just gonna castle and he's not breaking my center. Now I'm actually upset that I didn't go knight e2, but I had to make a choice because it was my move and I had no other sensible moves. Now I want to go a3, b4, b5. He's giving me a target to attack. Okay, if I go a3 now, he probably has to take. Otherwise, I play b4. So a3, bishop c3, bc3, c5. Rook c8 doesn't make sense since he played c6. So I'm just going to go a3. If he retreats the bishop, I'm going b4. If he takes, I'm taking with the pawn. And then he probably has to play c5. And then I could consider queen e2 or queen b2. Queen b2 seems interesting. If c4, okay. He has wasted a tempo because he played bishop b4 and then bishop d6. So I'll just go b4. I see no reason not to go b4. So I definitely have a problem with c6 and then rook c8. Because if you want to go c5, you should go c5, not c6. And if you go c6, you probably don't want to go c5. So rook c8 doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay. Kind of like rook fc1 to threaten nothing for the moment. But rook fc1 is still a good idea, I feel. He's not on the h2 pawn. So I could consider rook fc1 followed by bishop g3. I like rook fc1. It's the most natural square for the rook. And if he ever moves the bishop, or let's say goes queen b6, then I will have knight b5. If I go bishop g3 and he does nothing and takes, then I have knight b5. Okay. Moving the same piece again. He wants to take on f3 and take on h2. So I believe bishop g3 makes a lot of sense. I really don't care about bishop takes f3. So I'm just going to safeguard my pawn. He is hanging mate if I play knight b5 and he takes it and I get to sack my queen on c8 because I have a bishop on d3. And if he takes on f3, I always have bishop f5 ideas. So yeah, I feel like white has an edge here. Although we will see. Okay, happy to see that, giving up the bishop. I don't see a way for him to target f3. If knight h5. Okay, rook e8. I don't know what rook e8 does. So knight b5 now makes a ton of sense because I have a bishop on g3. So knight b5, cb5, queen c7, rook c7, rook c7, bishop c7, bishop c7 seems good to me. And if bishop d6, queen d6, knight b5, is that better or worse? Well, he has queen b8. So knight b5 now, he has to take it. And then in the end, I can take on b5 with my bishop. So knight b5, cb5, queen c7, he has to take. I'm ruining his pawn structure. Knight b5, cb5, queen c7, bishop c7, rook c7, rook c7, bishop c7, threatening bishop. Okay, yeah, that's the bishop pair. That should be okay. He has to take. Maybe I should have taken with the bishop, but I'm not sure. Now I have two bishops against two knights and a better pawn structure, so I feel like I should have a significant edge. And he needs to defend his pawns, so he basically is forced to take the rook now. And once he does, I recapture, he goes rook c8. I move my bishop, he goes rook c. If he goes rook c3, I go bishop b5. So he probably goes a6. And then I go bishop f5. Should I go bishop f5 there? Now I cannot play rook c1 because of knight e8. So a6 immediately. Okay. Now what do I do? I cannot challenge the c1 square. That's very annoying. But I could go rook c1, rook c8, rook c2. Rook c1, rook c8, rook c2. If knight e8, then bishop g3. Rook c1, rook c8, rook c2. That seems better than moving my bishop. Does he have any tricks? Rook c1, rook c8, rook c2 seems fine to me. This endgame seems incredibly favorable for me because of the two bishops and so many light squared weaknesses on the queen side. If he doesn't play rook c8, yeah, he has to play rook c8. Ah, he could go knight c5 here. He could go knight c5. No, he cannot. I go rook c5. Jesus. Idiot. He doesn't have knight e8, d6, c4 because I'm covering d6. He does have knight b6, c4. So, do I really want my bishop on a5? No. because then I'm not covering d6. So my bishop goes back to g3. And he is going to go knight b6 next. He's going to trade and go knight b6. So bishop g3 takes, knight b6, e4, takes, knight c4 takes. Maybe I should play bishop f4. Okay, I'm playing bishop g3 because he has g5 anyway. Bishop f4, takes, knight b6, e4, or g5 first, bishop g3, knight b6, e4, knight c4 takes. Yeah, I'm definitely not going bishop a5, so I'm gonna go bishop f4, and if he decides to go g5, that's fine. I want to give myself the option to go e4 and bishop c1, defending my pawn. So he trades and goes knight b6. That's the only sensible plan. He can throw in g5 if he wants to. If he doesn't, that's great, because I go e4 and can save my pawn. Okay, he didn't go g5, that's good. So now when I go e4, knight c4, I have bishop c1. Okay. Now he doesn't have g5 anymore. So since he didn't play g5, bishop f4 was much better than bishop g3. Okay. I need to start moving my king forward. So king f2, king f1, king e2 seems normal. Unless I have something better. Like e5 and bishop f5. I feel it's too early for that. So either king f1 or bishop c1. This is gonna be a long game. Okay, king f1 first. I always have the option to go e5, bishop f5. Unless he goes g6. But for the moment, that hangs the h-pawn. Okay. Now if he doesn't play g6, I'm gonna go e5. The knight goes somewhere, let's say to e8, and bishop f5. So e5. He could go knight d7, bishop f5, knight b6. That is true. So let's move my king in first. He has knight d7, knight b6. Okay. Let's move my king in. I want my king on c3. And then I want to, or b3. And I want to take on d5 and take on c4. Or I want to go e5, bishop f5. Or e5, f4, f5. Okay. Now, when my king gets close enough, I can also consider going a4, getting rid of the weakness. Okay, I need to free up my light squared bishop definitely, so king b3, king c3. He can never move the f6 knight because I take on d5 with check, and then go bishop e4, pick up the pawn on a7. Okay, what's wrong with ed5, king d5, bishop e4? I'm going for it. Okay. This should just be a clean pawn. I don't see any reason not to take this. And I want to go a4 next. Okay. The question is, can I go a4 now? a4, ab4, king b4. King c7. Also, do I throw in bishop f4? Maybe. I'm gonna throw in bishop f4. So that he doesn't have king c7. Now, a4, ab4, king b4. Seems good to me. I think Kb4 is his only move. I mean, he could consider giving up a pawn with knight d6, but I feel like that's not good. My bishops are just too good. They're controlling the entire board, basically. The only question is, where do I put my bishop if he goes g5? What's that? Why would you do that? So if I take on a5, he takes with the knight on a4 with check. I go king b4, he goes... Where does he go? I didn't consider this move at all. So ba5, knight a4, king b4. Seems good to me. ba5, knight a4, king b4. He can go knight b2 or knight b6. In both cases, I take the pawn. And I have an outside passer defended by the bishops. This seems like I'm just queening. No, sorry, he cannot go knight b6. He has to go knight b2. Maybe I didn't even take the pawn. Maybe after knight a4, king b4, knight b2, I just push my pawn. No, I take. I take because his knight has the b6 square. Although I could push and then on knight b6 go king b5. No, I cannot push because the knight on b2 is threatening knight d3 check, winning my bishop on f4. So I have to take first. So knight... Okay. I don't get this. So takes knight c3 check. King c4. Although I could also consider king c6, but then I give away the d5 square. Yeah, I kind of like king c4. King c4, knight e2. Bishop e5. Yeah, king c4. If knight a4, I'm just gonna push. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he was losing, but it's always tricky to deal with knights. Okay, let's have a look at the game. I'm not sure about his opening setup. So queen c2, d5. Yeah, the first thing here is after cd5. Wait, ed5? For some reason I thought that this was much better. So this is the variation: knight f3 and queen f5. And this is the best for black. I know that this is best for black, and it's very hard for white to play for an advantage. I always assumed ed5 was a mistake because of bishop g5. Okay, maybe it's not a mistake in itself, but it seems awkward. And bishop e6 especially is strange. Okay, e3, bishop d3. Yeah, now c5. c5 makes a ton of sense. Knight bd7 is still okay, knight f3, and c5. As you can see, c5 makes sense. Now I didn't want to go knight e2, although I see now that there were two games with knight e2. And what happened on c5? a3 as planned, bishop takes, pawn takes, and if c4, I guess bishop f5 is good, because I'm gonna go for the e4 pawn break. But what worried me was something like this. Oh, although maybe I could take, but let's assume I don't take, and he plays knight e4. And I don't get to play e4. My queen is very strangely placed, and I have to do something about the knight, so probably f3. Okay, so I played knight f3. He played c6. Rook c8 has been played once by a 2200 player. Okay. Yeah, and at this point I think white should have an edge. Yeah. Yeah, taking on f3 is just weird. Knight b5 is good. Wait, where did I make? Ah, bishop c7? Why? Why wouldn't I want to trade into that endgame? So, okay, a6 is forced. Ah, because now I have the c file. Rook takes was just a blunder because I lost the c file. Okay, equal. Dead equal. Even slightly better for black. This is extremely strange. Okay, it's equal, but yeah, he should not have taken with the king. This is just. Why is Ba5 better? I don't get it. Why is Ba5 better? Ah, okay. I get it now. The knight is just trapped and he loses a pawn. And this is fine. No more mistakes from here. Okay, I mean, he played a weird opening and then he played c6 and rook c8. That was very strange. Let's see. I had one mistake, 100% accuracy. Well, that's strange because I made a couple of mistakes. He had two blunders. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope you got something from the game. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.